I used to put a Post-it note on my computer that said record because I literally forget more often than I remember. Awesome. So what the heck am I here to talk to you about today? And it's really job exists, and the reason that I'm not running the user group program anymore and I am sitting in a new role is because of really a shift that we've seen in the world and the way that marketing has tried to react to that shift. Particularly at HubSpot in 2020 and most years before that, campaigns were not a new thing. Campaigns are the language that most marketers, and although they all define them differently, they mean different things, but a common thing that we saw at HubSpot, and I think that a lot of people probably can relate to, is that you run different campaigns for different things. You do them for product launches. You might do some stuff in the middle of the funnel to try to drive more demand for reps. You probably do some enablement work where you have concentrated pushes around helping your sales reps sell better. And this is really how we function at HubSpot. We had a lot of success in these individual campaigns, but at the end of the day, they were still really siloed, and the focus across the organization felt blurred in that we had success, but you could only point to it in one specific part of the flywheel, and you could only point to it for one specific team in most of the cases. So at the end of the day, what we wanted to do this year is find a world where we could create a better world of campaigns, and at the end of the day, create a more cohesive structure, both for our internal teams, but also to create a more cohesive experience for our customers. Because at the end of the day, when you have things that are disconnected or siloed internally, there is someone who is dealing with your company who's going to feel that externally. Think about a time that you have registered for a webinar and then someone else followed up with you inviting you to that webinar, or you just learned about a new product that launched and someone else contacts you about something completely different. That kind of friction really ends up on the customer. So we wanted to correct that this year. That's what I'm here to talk to you guys about. I'm a very visual person, although I'm very ugly with my frameworks that I make. So in another sense, this is what we looked like last year, right? Like we had all these different campaigns running in silos. And what we wanted to do this year was we wanted to bring them together in a way that we organized our efforts around the part of the flywheel that we were targeting and really encompassed everything that we were doing in our product. We wanted to put our product first, and we wanted to use it to help steer the direction of everything else we were working on. And what we call these are flywheel campaigns, rightfully so, because they are meant to help us target everyone around most of the stages of the flywheel. And really, they're meant to help align our marketing, sales, service, and product teams around ongoing themes that we think are going to be important for our business as well as for the people who buy from us. And so that is what flywheel campaigns are at a really, really high level. That doesn't explain anything. I promise I will go into more detail. Again, at the end of the day, like what we found was that we had this situation where, like, if you hear two instruments playing and they're both beautiful, but they're playing different songs, they're playing slightly off, it's still going to sound really bad. So the analogy I like to use, and that I think is what you want to shoot for, is you want your team to be playing in a kick-ass rock band. You want everything to sound great. You want it to be in sync, and you want all those instruments that people were already playing to really come together and make one well-rounded song. So, did I miss a slide? Thought I did. Anyways, so essentially, like I said, the old role of our marketing campaigns was one in which our efforts were really siloed. We found that we had low engagement when it came to other teams working with marketing on some of the stuff that we were putting forth because they were so distracted, whether that be services or sales. And reporting across all of the things we were trying to do was really disconnected or only told a really specific part of the story. What we wanted to work towards in this new world was something called flywheel campaigns. And this is where we tried to do three main things. And you're going to hear me talk about these things a lot today. The first one, because it has to be the first one, is to get our teams more aligned about what we are talking about, how, the cadence in which we do it, all of that. Next is we wanted to get better adoption for campaigns. Not only did we want people on the same page, but we wanted everyone to be working on things with enthusiasm, and they wanted people to be bought in on the things that we were trying to do. And lastly, we wanted to build a program that allowed us to adapt our strategy throughout the year as we learned more, as we had that unified reporting coming in. And so these are really our guiding pillars. We want to make sure our teams are aligned, we're making it easy for everyone to participate, and we're improving and adapting as we go along. So this, in a very ugly slide again, is our framework: align, adopt, adapt. And that's what I'm going to try to talk kind of through our campaign strategy with you guys today. I will also preface this conversation by saying campaigns is a really broad word. This is actually like one of my favorite things that happened. I think it was last week on Twitter. HubSpot was basically like, hey, does anyone know what campaigns are? Like, how do you define them? And whoever Mike is, I don't know who he is, he's out there somewhere, my favorite man on Twitter of the day, said, it's only a campaign if it comes from the Champagne region of France, otherwise it's just sparkling buzzwords. I thought it was funny, but more importantly, I think, again, that you can define campaigns as a lot of things. And I think most often where we define them at HubSpot is by where they exist in that flywheel, so in that giant customer life cycle. And for the campaigns I'm going to talk to you about today, I want to specify that really where we're focusing in is where we bring prospects to customers and keep customers super engaged. So HubSpot does a ton of stuff at the tippity top of the funnel, right at that attract stage, to have people understand who we are as a brand, what we do, the importance of the different types of sales, services, marketing, best practices that we preach. Really what my team focuses on is taking people who are somewhat aware of HubSpot and taking them from a place where they're relatively aware of HubSpot to a place where they've purchased and are super happy and engaged with our software. So we do things, I like to say within every flywheel, there are flywheels. Like, you can just keep zooming in on it. For example, when someone is aware of your software and haven't purchased yet, you can still do things to get their attention for the first time and that are considered a higher level engagement versus a sales type touch. But really, long story short, where we're going to focus today is the point where someone is already in our database to where we're trying to get them to become a customer, and not just a customer, but a happy and engaged customer. So when I talk about campaigns, no, there is a much wider world, but this is where we're focusing. All right, so Align, how the heck do you get 70 people across 5 different organizations on the same page and working together on one campaign definition, schedule, you name it? It starts by knowing the different parties or the different people that you want to get involved. And what we did at the beginning of the year was we literally mapped this out. We said, who are all the different stakeholders that we think are important in this process? And what it really boiled down to were a few big buckets. First, product. We said right at the outset that we wanted our campaigns to be product-led. We wanted to start by understanding what was worth talking about in our software, both new and existing features, and what different stories could we tell about that. Next, we wanted to make sure that our marketing team was aligned and bought in this across different marketing teams. Marketing, it tends to be the team that bears the most weight when it comes to campaigns, and that's no different for us. We are going to be the team that is creating a lot of the resources, leading the strategy, and helping to push campaigns forward. That said, the buck doesn't stop with us. We know that at the end of the day, if we get super aligned with product, we create something awesome, and we build an amazing campaign around it, but no one does anything with that, we really haven't done anything at all. So the last team that we really wanted to make sure we were focusing on and bringing into this plan was our enablement team. The way that enablement works at HubSpot is that while we have different teams for sales and services, and even our partner team, all of those teams have different enablement representatives, and that's really who we work with. So we find people from all the different essentially constituencies that we wanted to get bought in on campaigns, have enablement point of contacts, and bring them into the world of campaigns with us. So we have a representative from, we have representatives from services, sales, and our partner program that come into the campaign world with us and understand how do you take what we're doing and bring it out to their teams to make it more useful. So we know those teams, but we also had to define who was doing what. And so for product, they're obviously building product. They are the ones who are putting awesome features together for HubSpot, and they are also telling us why those features are important, why they're exciting, and honestly, what's the narrative that the market's going to care about to get them using those features. They also assist in helping our team think about, again, how to frame that usage and tell larger stories around not just our software, but different trends in sales, marketing, and services. That's their role that they play. They really build the stuff and tell us what's important and why. Our marketing team then takes that product, and we're in charge of taking that and really bringing that to market in terms of what's the story we tell, how do we bundle and frame these things, how do we actually build content that is going to help all the different teams we want to use this? And then how do we act as the team that orchestrates all of the work across these different organizations? That's the role we play. We take the product information, turn it into something useful, and then get the buy-in from other teams to essentially make use of it. And that brings me to enablement, who we partner really closely with. They are the team that says, hey, you've given me a bunch of great resourcing, you've told me what's important. Now my role is to take that and actually transform that into something my team cares about. So we work really closely with enablement, where we can essentially say, here's why we think you're going to care about this campaign, here's how we think it applies to you. And then they actually take it and they carry it over the line and bring it to their teams to get them really excited about it. Cool. Keep going. What this looks like in a more, I guess, an outline that shows what we're actually producing is this. You have product teams coming out with everything from features to market research. Campaign team essentially putting together both external content to talk about whatever our campaign is about. In our case, we tend to take our campaigns and focus on themes or trends in the market, and then produce both external content for that theme to support telling a narrative about it, as well as internal tools to help our reps sell, service, or engage partners around that theme. So we both want to tell an external story, and then we also want to enable our teams to work in sync with that external story, whether it be helping to spread it or to react to people who are interested in that story. And that is something that we do through a ton of different types of assets. For us, we support any given theme or narrative that we're trying to talk about at a given time, with everything from webinars to website pages, to decks, to call scripts, things like that. The themes that we focus on tend to be essentially CRM platform driven themes that are going to support whatever the products that we have that we are trying to focus on. I'll give you a tangible example, which was in the month of March. We ran a campaign that was focused on the idea that having insights into your marketing and sales and services efforts is the thing that makes teams able to scale quickly and to grow. That was inspired by some of our new conversation intelligence features, some of our new reporting features. And so that was the way we brought that to market. We did that through webinars about different aspects of insights and reporting, websites about that kind of thing, as well as sales tools. And then last but not least, we have enablement, which is to say, how do we take all this cool stuff that we built and actually get people to consume it, whether that is people externally or our own reps internally. We do that through things like creating playbooks for people to go out and use them, sending emails, using documentation, and then also essentially like doing a lot of video-based training. So I'll dig into these pieces a little bit more. I wanted to give just a high-level overview of kind of where each of those teams sit. You get a click, there we go. The other tool that we have for alignment is not just knowing what teams own as a whole in terms of the parts of the campaigns that we're trying to drive forward, but we also define different roles within those teams. The analogy that I use here is that we don't want to avoid having too many cooks in the kitchen. We want each cook to know exactly what course they're preparing. So within all the different teams that we work with, we have different levels of essentially responsibility that you have for campaigns. You're either someone who is a decision maker who gets to say no, yes, don't stop, go, collect 500, 200. I haven't played Monopoly in a long time, sorry. Or you are someone who is responsible for a particular piece of campaign. So you don't control necessarily strategy as a whole, but what you do is you control something like our webinar program, or you run something around sales training, perhaps. So you own a component of campaigns, or a large kind of chapter of campaigns. We also have people who are really point solution owners. So they might not own sales training as a whole, but they are the people who build the videos that sales use to mirror their demos off of. You're very specific, you own a very small thing, and mostly you're just reacting to whatever we have. So what we do is we've mapped out everyone who's participating in campaigns, essentially worked with them to get agreement on what level of participation they have, and then we've mapped that to the process that we have to put each campaign out into market. What that means is that we essentially say, here are all the steps and the timeline for what it takes to go from a shell of an idea to a finished live campaign, and here's who's involved in which of those stages, and what level of responsibility they have. So at a really high level, you'll see that when it comes to choosing what we talk about, choosing what is the theme of the campaign that we have, what do we want to go tell the market, there's a really small number of people who have any kind of say in that. That said, when it comes to actually thinking about what are all the different individual pieces of the campaign that we can contribute to help tell that story, either externally or internally, that's where we would involve more different people from the campaign. So this has been one really good tool, I think, for alignment, is just making sure that people know exactly what their role is in a campaign and what's expected of them at each stage. We map this out. We give people a really specific spreadsheet with their name, with their expectation, and then we give them a framework to go work against, so they know exactly what meetings they need to be in, exactly what decisions they need to make, and exactly what's expected of them at each stage of campaign planning or execution. So what we can do with all of this structure is actually put together a lot of stuff. And this is a slide that maybe I should have had a little bit earlier, but this is showing you what a campaign looks like for us in our HubSpot world of campaigns. And that is essentially that we look at our product information, we look at our competitive intel, we look at data around our own product usage, data around the world around us, and we come up with themes that we think are important to talk about. Again, these are mostly grounded in our own product and what we think is going to be really important to bring to market or to emphasize. For each of those themes, we'll take, again, the example of insights and reporting being a larger theme. We then create both an external push around that theme to help spread awareness for what that is, in the market, specifically for us to our database, because again, we're not trying to reshape the way the world thinks about something. We're trying to reshape the way our database thinks about it. And we do that through all the tools in our arsenal. Product-led webinars, more strategic webinars, blog posts, offers, thought leadership when it comes down to it. So we create essentially that external narrative and we help push it out to our database. At the same time, we align our teams internally around that theme and how they help to sell or service based off of it. So at any given time, that means for them, knowing what sales motions match to whatever we're talking about. If we're talking about reporting, we want them to understand what kind of companies are going to benefit from our reporting features. And we want them to be armed with things like pitch decks, like target lists of different contexts to go after, different scripts that they can use, templates to use to follow up with people who are attending our webinars or who might be a good fit to attend our webinars. And we put all of that together for both our sales and our services teams to make sure that we're not only bringing in new business with these campaigns, but we're also keeping our customers engaged and helping them as well. It's a really big piece of this, is that we try to do both of those things, and we find by getting those teams super aligned, we can do that. And there's also stuff that fits somewhere in the middle, whether you want to define it as external content or rep enablement, things like website pages, product pages, case studies that we also focus on. And then last but not least with these campaigns, we also think about distribution. So once we have come up with both these internal enablement packs and these external narratives, we look at how do we get those out into the world. And we do that by aligning teams like our email teams, both for customers and non-customers. We do it by getting, again, those enablement teams excited and bought in on how to bring those to market within HubSpot, whether that's through rep trainings, emails, documentation, playbooks, you name it. So this is the entire world of the campaigns that we're running. And again, we're only able to produce this much content across this many teams because everyone knows the exact role that they're playing, or like I said, the exact course that they're meant to be cooking up in that kitchen. The last thing that I would layer onto this in terms of frameworks, and this is something we rolled out a few months into the year, was that we also try to be really specific around the level of effort that goes into each campaigns. We've committed to running campaigns one after another throughout the year to make sure there are continual pushes around exciting external narratives and new sales motions and playbooks for our teams. That said, we also know that not every campaign has to be created equal, and we try to stress that as well by saying, hey, what for us, for each of these teams, does each level of campaign mean? And so we have everything from these like really big, huge push campaigns that we do that usually include like a huge new product launch, tons of external content, a bunch of enablement, like weeks of training for our reps, all the way down to campaigns that we run that are meant to give our team breaks and be a little bit more low key, where they're maybe just to help people get familiarized with a few features that we have and some of the narratives that surround those. And those, they might not get a big external push. They might mostly just be a refresher for our sales enablement teams or our services enablement teams. So we try to be really specific whenever we launch or get started on a new campaign. We try to outline exactly what is expected of people in terms of level of effort for that campaign. So some things in some HubSpot features that map really well to kind of some of the alignment stuff I've talked around here. First and foremost is our campaigns tool. If you haven't seen it, it's gotten quite a makeover over the past few months. It is essentially your one-stop shop for all things campaigns right now. It helps keep you organized. And if you have every team looking at the same dashboard and using the same campaign tracking within HubSpot, that is a great way to help people stay organized. The other feature I would call out is the calendar. How many times have people wanted to know, when is something launching? When is something due? When's this email going out? The calendaring feature in HubSpot is an awesome feature to help people stay aligned and on the same page around essentially what is taking place for your campaign and when. And then also one of the features I wanted to call out, and I promise there's links to go check out more in-depth information on campaign stuff on HubSpot at the end of this, is the commenting feature. We use everything from Slack to email to this to stay in touch with each other, but the more you can allow people to really comment within the world of whatever they're working on, the better. And that's what this feature does. It's a feature within HubSpot that essentially lets your team go in and actually comment on specific assets or pieces of a campaign so that if someone has a question about when an ebook launched, or if there's a template that's associated with it, they can do that right in HubSpot, which is really nice to have people in the moment being able to get the information they need. Like I said, aside from that, we do a ton to keep the teams aligned. Really, my main job at this point with campaigns is to keep our teams aligned on whatever we are doing at any given point and when it needs to get done and who's supposed to do what. So we use Slack. I love Slack. I love HubSpot, but in my mind, HubSpot and Slack work better together. So we do a lot in terms of creating channels for each campaign, pinning really important information, providing updates over Slack, using Slack for feedback, things like that. And we also host weekly meetings in which we go over this exact timeline that I showed you earlier. We show everyone exactly where we are in it for each campaign, as well as essentially what they can expect in terms of next steps. So next step is, once we have everyone on the same page, we have everyone bought in on campaigns and what they are, what they look like, what we're talking about, we need to make sure people are actually using the stuff we create. And that is, I think, the bane of most marketers' existence. Is you put together a really great ebook, you put together a web page to match it, you've got a webinar that supports it, and you put all of it out into the world and people engage with it, and then, hey, your reps don't follow up. Or you put together all this great stuff and you've got a ton of prospects using it, and somehow one of your customers finds it and says, like, why didn't you tell me about this? This was pretty cool. I could have benefited from this, even though I'm already using your sales or using your software, your service. So that's a big goal for us too, is not just to create a bunch of awesome stuff, but to make sure that all of the different intended audience are getting it and using it. So one way that we've done this is to literally look at our campaign calendar and think to ourselves, how do we create order out of chaos? I think a lot of times people base campaigns around quarters or weeks naturally. We hadn't been doing that at HubSpot. We had really tied our campaigns to the exact time and place that product releases were happening in the past. And we realized that was creating way too much chaos for us. So what we did is we actually moved to a new model where we said, we're going to make it really predictable for you to know when and how a new campaign is going to launch at HubSpot. And we're going to make sure that we're still tying it to our product releases. However, we're not going to feel that sense of urgency that a campaign needs to essentially be launched on the same exact day that a product comes out. Sometimes it works out that way, and for some of the bigger product launches we do that. But in general, we try to understand generally the timing that fits between them. The way that we've structured our campaigns is such that we have about 3 months to plan and to build out any of the resources and all the things going into a campaign. So that's the time that it takes for us to sit down, think about what we're building, all the way until the time when, for the first 2 weeks of any campaign, we focus on enablement. So before we've actually pushed a lot of the external content that we have out into the world, we spend 2 weeks getting our reps really comfortable and caught up with whatever we are going to talk about. We want them to be prepared for essentially what's going to go out into the world. Once they are caught up and once they are prepared and once they've been enabled around that campaign, then we push our content live and they can immediately go start to take actions on that, whether it be to share it out to their customers or to follow up with a product webinar attendee who might be a good fit for an upsell. All of the above is done by giving them a really repeatable cadence where they first can learn and then they can leverage, essentially, is the two different levers that we pull for that. And so this is what that model looks like. It's one in which we say, hey, in order for you to use the stuff we're going to give you for this campaign, we know that we first need you to understand it. We need you to be bought in on it. We need you to be excited about it. And I think all too often, people skip this learn phase and they go right to a leverage phase. They say, hey, here's a new campaign. Here's all the stuff that we pushed out. Go follow up with these people. Go send this thing. And what you've done is you've skipped the part where you've actually gotten your teams excited about it and bought in on it. So we do our best to first help our teams learn what is the campaign and why should you care about it. And then we do a second push where we have them go out and actually leverage the content that we've created for that campaign to sell or to service. What could be included in that? This is just a generic smattering of things, but during the learn time period, we might do things like doing talk track training or demo training for a rep so that they understand not just our products, but what's the overall narrative? Why should we care? Like, what does this have to do with HubSpot as a company? What does it have to do with your sales cycle? Same thing with customer success. Why do your customers need this? What are they struggling with that we can help them with right now? So we essentially put out a big wave of educational resources for reps. And then once they've had the time to digest that, what we do is then give them the tools to go leverage that learning out in the wild. So things like we put out live content, on-demand content. We give them lists of contacts who they should be following up with. All the traditional enablement stuff that you normally see with a campaign. That comes second. So quickly to move along here, I want to make sure we save plenty of time for Q&A. Some tools that you can use out of HubSpot to help with that adopt phase or to get your teams more bought in on going out and using campaigns. The first of which is tasks. It's just literally a way to get people to have something assigned to them that they are meant to go do. It's a really good tool for getting internal teams to be aligned on what they're supposed to be doing within marketing as well as outside of marketing. One of my favorites, I'll say, is Playbooks. I can't get enough of Playbooks for sales, services, and marketing alignment, which is to say, hey, you have a bunch of stuff that you want people to read, do, or go act on. You can actually build for them that exact playbook in HubSpot so that while they're in the software, they can actually pop out all the different steps they should be taking, why they should be taking it, what resources they should go learn, things like that. So we love things like Playbooks that we can actually guide reps through learning right in the software. And last but not least, I love sales dashboards. It's one of my favorite things that we use also, which is to say, hey, we have a bunch of content and we have actionable lists of people that you need to go follow up with who've engaged in that content. And we have resources for you to read to learn how exactly to do that follow-up. We're gonna put it all in one place. So that if you are a rep, you can pop in. I'm not a rep, so I can't see anything here, but you would in theory see a list of your contacts or leads in the system who are really relevant to talk to about something, as well as the resources to help you go do that. So common use cases here for us is if we think that there's a list of people who will be a great fit for a product webinar. Hey, we see that they're using the software already. If you're in services, go tell them that this thing is coming out so that they can go follow up with that. We'll give you the list of people on the left and the resources to go reach out to them on the right, usually including HubSpot templates, so that with one click, they can actually just pop open a template in HubSpot and send it over to those contacts. Last but not least, and I will spend the least time on this just because there isn't a ton of reporting stuff transparently that I can pop up on the screen for you guys, in fear of someone yelling at me from HubSpot. No one would, but anyways. So the last piece is adapt, and it's saying, how do you continually improve this work? And it's really hard to do transparently, especially when you're doing a ton of campaigns on top of each other, because odds are good that you're working on the next one before one's even done. But the way that we do this is that we build out a reporting cadence that allows us to constantly reflect on what's going on and try to get ahead of change as fast as possible. So every month, we run campaigns roughly once a month at HubSpot right now. Every month we have a retro where we don't necessarily focus on the specific campaign. We just look at our campaigns program and we say, what's going well? What can we do better? What should we start doing that we're not doing already? And we ask those three questions and we ask them of everyone and we get a ton of feedback and we sit and we have open discussions every month with everyone who works on campaigns. So we do that every single month for all of our campaigns that are in flight at once. We also do quarterly readouts where we go more specifically into the performance of each campaign. We'll look at which campaigns are performing best, which are performing poorly, which assets do we need to focus more on, what are the friction points that we need to solve for in terms of those three pillars that I showed you: aligning, adopting, and then also adapting. Are we being able to react quick enough? We'll actually report out on stuff based on that framework. And then also we have essentially like year-long dashboards that we use like anyone running campaigns, where you can go in and you can see influenced MRR, the contacts associated with any given campaign, all of that good marketing data, attribution information, all in one place. And we have those for each campaign as well as for our campaigns program as a whole, so we can compare campaigns against each other. Again, like one of the beautiful things about HubSpot is that they've made reporting a lot easier for people, especially for people who are looking to report against campaigns. This is in beta right now. I think it's freaking awesome though. It's our new marketing home layout, which actually allows you to take all those cool things I just showed you and put them in one screen. So it's a really easy place for you to have as a one-stop shop kind of reporting starting spot. And then also, if you haven't played around with it, I've gotten lost in this thing for literally hours. Our new custom report builder, which is in Pro Plus, is fantastic. It allows you to essentially report on campaigns in a number of different ways that we haven't been able to before, reporting structure-wise. You can do attribution, you can understand just about any metric you're allowed to play around with and use for either access of it. Highly recommend playing around with this. And we actually have a webinar we did a while back as a part of our reporting and insights campaign that goes over this. So I'm happy to share the link for that, and you guys can learn more about how to play around with the custom report builder. So how are these going? We've been doing these since the beginning of the year, this new structure, new pace, more alignment. And long story short, I think it's been going really well. Like for each campaign, we've been able to build out a ton of resources that are high quality, that are used by not just our marketing team, but also our sales team, also our service team. And we've truly been able to hit multiple areas of the flywheel with the work that we're doing because teams are on the same page. The thing I'm most proud about, honestly, is that if you asked anyone who's working on campaigns what all the different pieces of a campaign are, they'd be able to tell you. And I think that's actually pretty hard to get from teams that run this type of work. There's a lot more you can go into in terms of the actual software campaign-wise. I'll link here to a user blog post we just put out that goes over a lot of these new features and tools and actually gets you direct links to go play around with them. Again, I'll also link to that custom reporting webinar if you want, and try to make it easy for you to do some deep dives into the product. I'm happy to try to answer as many product questions as I can, but also I'm here to dig into more questions just around how we as a company work together and how we have gotten organizational buy-in and all that good stuff. And I will stop sharing so we can be faces again. Awesome.
So yeah, questions, feel free to type or turn on your screen and ask them live.
Yeah.
I've got some too.
Another question on everyone's mind is, what is your favorite type of donut? The answer to that is the apple fritter. So I'll knock that one out of the way because I know everyone's gonna ask that.
I've got one that I think people are thinking, but I have not asked.
Let's hear it.
I know a lot of the people in the audience run much smaller teams where they're marketing is one, maybe plus some other helpers on the fringe. Yeah. What is your advice for getting everyone like cross-functionally kind of bought into a campaign, the work and all that?
It's a great question. So I think truthfully, the answer starts with getting buy-in from leadership, and that's leadership both on your team as well as the other teams you want to work on. We even hit a few bumps here with our own work, where if there was a team that was meant to be contributing, but they didn't feel like the work they were doing for our campaign was working towards their goal, they were less likely to do it. And so the first step that we took with campaign planning, and you could do this whether you have an entire marketing team or just you, is to lay out all the stakeholders that you need to be bought in on helping you, to think through what they get out of this. So like, what is in it for them? What is the ask that you have for them? And then map out the stakeholders you need to go get buy-in for that, and then go to them with those requests. So I start almost any project, I do it anything at this point with a stakeholder map, which is to say, who do I need to care about this and to say yes for me to be able to get what I need to get done? So that's what I would start by doing, is think not just what's in it for you, but what's in it for them, and who's going to give their team or give their employee permission to go do that.
So good.
Yeah. I also, like, for what it's worth, there are so many pieces of a campaign that you could run. You could focus on promotion. You could focus on like, there are 1,000 different pieces of marketing that can go into anything. And we ourselves get really, really lost in terms of scope sometimes. The best thing that we have found is that with any campaign, we start by defining what is the goal of our campaign. And if an asset that we're working on doesn't tie directly back to that, we throw it in the trash can at this point. So if you're a smaller team and you're also trying to say, hey, I think I can only do 3 of the things on that 20-item list, what do I start with? Do an exercise that says, how closely does this map back to my goal, and trash the stuff that doesn't. You can always add more on. It's going to make your campaigns suffer if you try to do too much at first. So many campaigns happening. How do you ensure your internal team members understand and absorb the information? Great question. It is a really good question. And a lot of that, I think, comes down to the organization that we can provide as a campaigns team. And so for what it's worth, coming up with a really common format for campaigns has been really helpful, because people may need to learn what the narrative or what the featured products are, or what the the actual content that's supporting it looks like for each campaign, but they don't have to relearn structure. And that's been really important for us. They don't have to relearn how they get resources. They don't have to relearn what is expected of them for a campaign. So we've tried to take the things that we can keep consistent and do that, so that you do not have to relearn that part every time. We also have leaned really heavily, honestly, on documentation, meetings, and communications. So every week we I spend a good probably hour or two putting together an email that is simple and as thorough as I can make it, that goes over each campaign we have in flight, and is essentially the information you need to know, the actions you need to take, and the dates that are coming up for that campaign, so that everyone has one place where they can check in, but do it for multiple campaigns at once. If you are someone there's almost like 2 answers to this, right? So for our marketing team, or the team that's building out a lot of the resources, it's a juggling game. We try to keep you as organized as possible through meetings, through updates, to know what is due at what point. We try to keep the framework consistent for you. On the enablement side, or on that external side, if you are a sales rep, if you are a services rep, if you are someone who works with our partner team, we don't try to show you more than 1 campaign at once. We try to get you to only focus and care about whatever is live at the moment. And then we make it easy for you to find it after the fact, but you are not expected to focus on more than 1 campaign at once. So when it comes to actually getting teams to go use that, we don't put more than 1 thing in flight at once for them. That's a good question. It's definitely not easy. I think context switching is probably the biggest enemy of campaigns that we run up against, is just making it easy for people to switch between the different things we talk about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you I'll have another one also.
Okay.
Do you guys find sharing like an editorial calendar sort of view helpful for kind of the internal team?
Yeah, definitely. We have an intense tracking system that I didn't show here, that is every piece of content or asset or training that is going out. It has all of the deadlines on it for when it needs legal review, when it needs to be localized, when it's actually going live. We have all of the links to every piece of that content, whether it is a Google Doc that is a brief for it, or it is a actual finalized landing page, or if it's a URL that needs to be published as a landing page. Like, we put everything into a monster doc that we have an amazing project manager build for us. That truthfully keeps us sane most of the time. That said, again, we only show that information to people who need it. So if you are a rep who we want to take action on these campaigns, we actually don't show you the specific stuff that's coming up until it's launched. We tell you what the next theme is, so you can get vaguely excited about it, but we don't try to get you bought in on that. We just try to get you to focus on the current campaign.
You mentioned a brief in a Word doc. How do you usually kick
Yeah,
off a new campaign theme with your team internally?
great question. So I'm going to, let me see if I can find, let me find my trusty calendar slide because it is, I literally run campaigns and I look at the slide constantly to keep myself sane. Sorry, as soon as my computer knows I need to do something quickly, it takes forever. So, all right. Well, I showed you that that essentially process slide that runs through the timeline of a campaign, and where we start for every single campaign is with the broad theme, and those have been decided essentially for the year already. So we know what is important to HubSpot for the year because boy, does that take a lot of buy-in from the top, and we can't be changing those type of things. We know our product roadmap, like we vaguely have that. But what we start every campaign with is working really closely with our product marketing team to define what we call the big idea and the positioning for the campaign. We sit down with them and we essentially put together a guidance presentation on what is this campaign, what's the concept that we're trying to get across, how does this relate to our software, and we put together a really thorough guidance doc. And once that is in a good place, that's how we kick off our campaigns. We share that information with everyone so that everyone starts by being on the exact same page about what are we trying to talk about, what is our perspective on it, how does it tie into our product, how does it help you to sell or service better, and we start from there, and then we say, now that you have this, go out and think about how you plug into this. And that's the way we start every single campaign, is with what we call our big idea and positioning deck. And that is like, we do not move forward until that is set, because if you go forward and that is not in place, earlier in the year, we were a little bit off on the timing. So we tried to come up with the ideas for what we would put into the campaign before we had that. And we probably backtracked and lost a month because we came up with a bunch of stuff and said, wait, no, this doesn't accomplish it. This doesn't tell the right story. So always positioning a big idea deck first.
It's really helpful.
Yeah. And again, we lean on product marketing for that because A, we have a large enough team that we can do that, and B, because the North Star for our campaigns is product. And so that's the team that understands that best. For you, it might not be that. For you, it might be the team that understands SEO and acquisition most, and they understand what's going to get people into your database. That might be your North Star. I would say, like, it starts with what the goal of your campaign is, and that's who should really be involved in coming up with that. What else you guys got? Campaigns are almost like such a broad thing that sometimes it can be hard to narrow it down to specific questions because, again, people run them a million different ways and there's like 1,000 different components in them. But yeah, I'm happy to try to answer anything.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
When you've launched the campaign and it's been running for a little bit, how quickly after it's been running do you look at metrics and decide if something is worthy of pivoting?
I love this question. Love this question because there are different metrics that we look at different times. We know right away once we've started promoting something if the engagement is going to be high on it from purely a like registrations or download standpoint. So some of those really surface level metrics of just, are people excited to engage with this thing? We can know almost immediately after we send our emails out, after we do like the initial essentially promotional blast for something. So that we understand relatively quickly, and that's been one of the things that we can pivot on fastest is just what gets people to engage with this most. So when you look at the changes we've made for campaigns, some of the quickest changes we've made have been in the type of content that we're producing. We can say, hey, people engage with interactive content way more than static content. In June, we're going to come out with an interactive workbook because we just know people are going to like it better than like the ebook we did last month. We learned that really quickly. So engagement stats we look at right away, and we try to benchmark against, again, similar themes that we've done in the past or against other campaigns. What takes a little bit is the influenced MRR side of things, because for us, we don't consider the sales window for something to report on attribution for closed until 90 days after. So if we put out an amazing product webinar all around, we'll say like the new operations hub that we launched, we put out a really awesome product webinar where we talked all about that. And we tried to explain to people, what is this? Why should you care about it? You know, what does it help you do in the world of marketing, services, sales? We're not going to know how much money that made us after the first month. So for something like that, we know that we need a 90-day window. And so it takes a little bit longer to react to. That said, one thing that's been helpful for us is now that we have a few campaigns under our belt, I can actually look at the work we did in January and I can see how much money did that influence overall and how did those buckets fall over those 3 months. So for any given campaign, these numbers are made up, maybe 20% of the money seems to come in the first month. 40% seems to come in the second month, and another 40% seems to come in the third month. If you know that, now you can start to take a campaign that's a month old and say, how much money did we make, and begin to predict how much money we're going to be making over the next few months. So for example, for our March campaign, it's almost been 3 months now, and I was actually almost able to predict, like not to the dollar, but I was able to predict really accurately how much money that was going to make in a 90-day window, because I could do the same math for it after month 1 as I did for the 3 months that followed January. So we try to do some predictive work that way. Yeah, it's not easy. I also will say, like, if anyone out there has cracked attribution reporting, let me know, because I think it's hard to know exactly what you can give yourselves credit for as marketers. We try to be really specific and we try to err on the side of caution, but things like web page visits, like, did they find you because of your campaign or something else? I don't know. Like, you can try to guess at that, but at the end of the day, some of that is really good guesswork at best. So the important thing for us for attribution has been that we just get people to agree on the sources that we're saying we can attribute to us in our work, and then we've just been consistent. So as long as for every campaign we're looking at the same types of sources for attribution, and everyone has agreed that those sources are things that we can truthfully say, yes, we are responsible for those, that's been how we've made that work for us.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have a few minutes and everyone's going to go have banana bread or carrot cake or donuts for lunch after this. Any other questions? Like I said, my email, Dave can email it out afterwards. I'm not shy. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to chat more over email, try to answer any other questions. As with everyone else who's got nutso summers, my schedule's a little bit crazy, but I'm happy to try to find time. If you want to chat over Zoom, let me know.
Yep.
Hey, Tim, you're on mute.
So I just want to say thanks. That was really helpful.
Awesome. I'm glad. It's been so much fun hanging out with you guys.
Awesome. I think if that's everything, we'll send out a recording of this so you can digest, study, do whatever. We'll also be sending out a couple other emails just to get some feedback on how you guys like the new format, how everything's been going. Appreciate any and all thoughts. But yeah, thanks again, guys, for attending, and we'll see you guys soon. In the meantime, if you have any ideas on what you might want to see, let me know, and I'll see what I can do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Super helpful.
Bye, guys.
Bye, y'all.